My fiancé's parents said, "You need to sign this prenup that leaves you with nothing." She nodded and said, "It's just a formality." I replied, "Then let's formalize it." The room went silent when I added my own clause. I, 29M, should have seen the red flags earlier, but love has a way of making you blind to the obvious. My fiancé and I had been together for 3 years, engaged for 6 months, and everything seemed perfect until her parents decided to drop a bombshell 2 weeks before our wedding. The meeting was arranged at their sprawling estate in the hills, complete with marble floors and crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my annual salary. Her father, a real estate mogul, and her mother, who came from old money, had always been polite but distant with me. I worked as a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company, making decent money, but nothing compared to their wealth. Her father slid a thick document across the mahogany table toward me. He explained that it was a prenuptial agreement, something their family lawyer had drafted. As I flipped through the pages, my stomach dropped. The agreement was brutal. I would have no claim to any assets acquired during the marriage, no alimony rights, and if we divorced, I would leave with exactly what I brought in, which wasn't much. What stung even more was my fiancé's reaction. She barely looked at me when she said it was just a formality, something they had to do for family reasons. Her voice was casual, dismissive, as if we were discussing dinner plans rather than the complete financial protection of her family's wealth against me. I told them I needed time to review it with my own lawyer. Her father's expression hardened, and he made it clear that the wedding was 2 weeks away, and this needed to be signed before then. No signature, no wedding. My fiancé finally looked at me then, and I saw something in her eyes that chilled me. Expectation that I would simply comply. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how easily she had dismissed my concerns, how she had sided with her parents without even pretending to consider my feelings. It wasn't about the money. I had always known she came from wealth. It was about respect, partnership, and what our marriage would actually mean. The next morning, I called my lawyer and explained the situation. He reviewed the prenup and confirmed what I already knew. It was completely one-sided. But then he asked me something that changed everything. What did I want out of this situation? I spent the weekend thinking, and by Monday, I had my answer. I called her father and told him I was ready to sign, but I wanted to add one small clause of my own. He seemed surprised but agreed to meet. When I walked into their house again, the same players were assembled around the same table. I had my own document ready, just a single page. I told them I was happy to sign their prenup exactly as written, but I wanted to add one reciprocal clause. I explained that if she was asking me to waive all rights to her family's wealth, then I wanted her to waive all rights to mine as well. This meant that anything I built, earned, or inherited during our marriage would be solely mine, just as her wealth would be solely hers. Her mother laughed and said I was being ridiculous. What could I possibly have that would matter? Her father was more cautious, asking what exactly I meant by my clause. I pulled out my laptop and showed them my side project. For the past year and a half, I had been developing a mobile app during my free time. It was a productivity tool that had started gaining serious traction. I had been keeping it quiet, working on it nights and weekends, but the user base was exploding. I had already been approached by 2 major tech companies about acquisition offers. The room went very quiet as I explained that my app currently had over 200,000 active users and was growing by 15,000 users per week. The preliminary acquisition offers were in the 8-figure range, and I hadn't even started serious negotiations yet. My fiancée stared at me in shock. She asked why I had never mentioned this before. I told her I had tried to discuss it several times, but she had always seemed disinterested in my work projects, often changing the subject or checking her phone when I brought up my app development. Her father's demeanor shifted completely. He started asking technical questions about the app, the business model, growth projections. I could see the wheels turning in his head as he realized that his daughter's poor teacher might actually have more liquid assets than anticipated. My fiancée tried to backtrack, saying that my clause was unnecessary since we trusted each other. I reminded her that she had just said the same thing about their prenup being just a formality. If it was really about trust, then neither of us should need protection. Her mother became visibly agitated, pointing out that their wealth was generational, built over decades, while my app was just a startup that could fail at any time. I acknowledged that was true, which was exactly why I wanted the same protections they were asking for. The family lawyer was called in to review my proposed addition. After an hour of discussion, he confirmed that my clause was legally sound and would indeed protect any business ventures or intellectual property I developed during the marriage. Her father tried a different approach, suggesting we could modify the original prenup to be more equitable. I told him I appreciated the offer, but I was actually comfortable with their original terms, as long as my clause was included. Their prenup plus my clause would create a perfectly balanced agreement where we each kept what we brought and built individually. My fiancée pulled me aside and asked if we could discuss this privately. She seemed genuinely surprised by my app's success and wanted to know why I had kept it from her. I explained that I had tried to share my excitement about the project multiple times, but she had never shown interest in the technical details of my work. She admitted that she had probably been dismissive, but said she didn't realize I was building something significant. I told her that was exactly the problem. She had made assumptions about my value and potential based on my current salary, just like her parents had. When we returned to the table, her father made one last attempt at negotiation. He offered to remove some of the more restrictive clauses from their prenup if I would consider sharing any future business success. I declined politely, explaining that if they believed their family wealth deserved protection, then surely they could understand why I wanted the same protection for my work. The standoff continued for another 2 hours. Her parents stepped out multiple times to discuss among themselves. My fiancée seemed torn, clearly uncomfortable with the situation but unwilling to directly oppose her parents. Finally, her father returned with a counteroffer. They would agree to my clause, but they wanted right of first refusal if I ever decided to sell my app. I found this amusing and declined, pointing out that they wouldn't give me right of first refusal on their real estate investments. As the evening wore on, it became clear that we had reached an impasse. Her family wanted my future success to benefit their daughter while protecting their own wealth from me. I wanted equal treatment, both of us keeping our individual assets separate. My fiancée asked for time to think about it. I told her that was fine, but I needed an answer by Friday since the wedding was the following weekend. I also mentioned that I had a meeting scheduled with one of the acquisition companies on Thursday. That Thursday meeting changed everything. The tech company made a formal offer that was significantly higher than their preliminary discussions had suggested. By the time I left their offices, I was looking at a potential sale that would set me up for life. I called my fiancée that evening to tell her about the offer. Her reaction was immediate and telling. She wanted to know if we could postpone signing the prenup until after the wedding. The sudden change in her priorities was enlightening. Friday arrived, and I went to their house for what I assumed would be our final discussion. The atmosphere was tense from the moment I walked in. Her father had clearly done his research on my app and the acquisition offer. He knew the numbers now. He made one final proposal. They would withdraw their prenup entirely if I would agree to a standard marriage contract where assets acquired during marriage would be shared. I told him I appreciated the gesture, but I was no longer comfortable with that arrangement. My fiancée looked confused and asked what I meant. I explained that the past week had shown me how quickly priorities could shift when money was involved. If she had been willing to ask me to sign away all rights to her wealth when she thought I had nothing, I wasn't confident about how she would handle our relationship when the dynamic shifted. Her mother accused me of being vindictive and trying to punish them for protecting their family's interests. I assured her that wasn't the case. I was simply applying the same logic they had used. If protecting individual assets was good policy when they had more, it remained good policy when the situation changed. The conversation grew heated. Her father accused me of manipulating the situation and hiding my app's value to gain leverage. I pointed out that I had been completely transparent about my work, but they had chosen not to pay attention until dollar signs were involved. My fiancée finally spoke up and asked what I wanted. I told her I wanted a partner who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide financially. The prenup situation had shown me that both she and her family saw me as a potential liability to be managed rather than an equal partner to be trusted. She insisted that wasn't true, that she loved me regardless of money. I asked her why she had been so quick to agree to a prenup that would leave me with nothing, but was now hesitant to sign one that would treat us equally. The room fell silent. Her parents exchanged glances, and I could see them realizing that their strategy had backfired completely. They had pushed for protection from someone they saw as financially inferior, only to discover that their daughter might actually be the one who needed protection. I stood up and told them I had made my decision. I was withdrawing from the wedding. Not because of the money, but because the past 2 weeks had shown me fundamental differences in how we viewed partnership and respect. My fiancée started to cry and asked if we could work through this. I told her honestly that I didn't think we could. The prenup had revealed underlying attitudes that couldn't be fixed with different legal documents. Her father tried one last time, offering to forget the whole prenup situation and proceed with the wedding as originally planned. I declined, explaining that trust wasn't something that could be turned on and off like a switch. As I walked toward the door, my fiancé asked if my decision would be different if they had treated me with more respect from the beginning. I told her probably, but we would never know now. Update 1. I sold my app 3 months later for significantly more than the original offer. The buyer was actually a competitor of the company that had been negotiating with me, and they were willing to pay a premium to keep the technology away from their rival. My ex-fiancée contacted me several times after the sale was announced in tech industry publications. She wanted to meet for coffee to discuss what had happened between us. I declined politely but firmly. 6 months later, I heard through mutual friends that she had gotten engaged to someone from her social circle, someone whose family wealth matched her own. They had a prenup, but apparently one that was much more equitable than what her parents had initially proposed to me. I don't feel vindictive about how things turned out. In fact, I'm grateful that the prenup situation forced us to confront fundamental differences before we made a permanent commitment. Money didn't ruin our relationship. It simply revealed incompatibilities that were already there. Looking back, I realized the prenup was never really about protecting assets. It was about power dynamics and respect. They wanted to maintain control while asking me to assume all the risk. When the power dynamic shifted, their tune changed completely, which told me everything I needed to know about their values. Update 2. A year later, I started my own company using the proceeds from the app sale. Business has been growing steadily, and I've been able to hire several talented developers who share my vision for user-focused technology. I met someone new about 8 months ago. She's a veterinarian who runs her own practice, and we've been taking things slowly. She's genuinely interested in my work, asks thoughtful questions about my projects, and shares her own professional challenges and successes with me. We've talked about the future, including the financial aspects of a serious relationship. Her attitude is completely different. She sees partnership as combining strengths, not protecting against weaknesses. We're both successful in our own right, and neither of us feels the need to diminish the other's contributions. I never thought I would be grateful for that prenup situation, but it taught me valuable lessons about standing up for myself and recognizing my worth. Sometimes the most difficult experiences lead to the most important growth. The wedding that never happened turned out to be the best thing that never happened to me.